Wraparound with Grace, Alessia, and Maryuri.
Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of the Wraparound. If you guys don't know who we are, we're just going to introduce ourselves once again. I'm Maryuri.
I'm Alessia.
And I'm Grace.
We have lots to talk about this week, so let's just get right into it, I guess. So we're going to start off with the NHL Draft Lottery. That was lots of big news after all the games that we were watching this past week. Everybody was watching to see who would get it, and now we have our answer, and it's the New York Rangers. So how are we feeling about the New York Rangers getting this pick? I mean, are they the most deserving out of all the teams that were put in the draw?
Okay, so here, the Rangers don't deserve it.
No, they don't.
Lafreniere had 112 points in 52 games in his last season in the Q, so he is a outstanding hockey player.
Mm-hmm.
But out of all the teams in the play-in round, they are the ones who could benefit from a first pick kind of the most, I think. For that, I think it's like Florida, New York Rangers, and Minnesota were the ones I think who could benefit from the first. For New York, I think it's fine. It's not who I would have wanted to get the first pick, but it works.
Out of all those teams, I was going to say the Rangers, the Panthers, and Minnesota were the most deserving.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at all the teams that were put into the first, like the phase one draw, I would have to say plain and simple, no, the New York Rangers did not deserve Lafreniere. Who could have deserved Lafreniere? The Red Wings, who were awful with 17 wins this season. But out of all those teams, I mean, Lafreniere could definitely work. And I mean, every team in the NHL would say they would love to have a guy like Lafreniere on their team. It adds to their talent, like with Panarin, Zibanejad, and Kakko. And who knows, this might make up for a potential Henrik Lundqvist exit or departure from the Rangers.
Yeah, and speaking of like Zibanejad, Kaapo Kakko, who was drafted second overall by the Rangers last year, there's other teams who definitely could have benefited by getting Lafreniere, but since the Rangers did get the pick, I feel like it is a pretty good matchup for him. You know, they have two really great young right wingers in Buchnevich and Kaapo Kakko. They both have a decent amount of points. You know, it's two people that Lafreniere could be paired up with, and I think that would be a good pairing because they're both all really young. And then they also have really great experienced left wingers like Chris Kreider and Artemi Panarin, who just score like an unbelievable amount of goals every year. And so I think they'd also be awesome people to help Lafreniere and mentor him and help him in his rookie season. So I don't know. I feel like it's definitely a good, team for him to kind of fit in and grow. I feel like if one of the other big teams like the Leafs, like the Pens, like the Oilers got him, I feel like that would have just been chaos. They already have such big stars that I feel like maybe Lafreniere would have been a little bit overshadowed by them, and he wouldn't have had the space to grow like he might have at the Rangers, or he could have had at Florida or Minnesota.
That's the other thing, though, is that I don't see him really fitting in to Florida's roster. Just his style of play, and just kind of the way he plays and everything. I don't really see him fitting in with the Panthers. So out of the three, Florida, New York, or Minnesota, I do think that New York was the best place for him to go.
Yeah. Also, out of those three, the Rangers, New York is probably one of the bigger hockey markets, which I think Lafreniere or a guy with his type of style of play would definitely, succeed in that type of market. So I know I hinted at that the Red Wings should have gotten the pick. Which team do you guys think should have gotten the pick first overall?
Oh, 100% the Red Wings. They had 39 points this season, and they're picking fourth. They aren't even in the top three, and the top three picks are the most important picks in the NHL draft.
I mean, if speaking of teams that were included because of the play-in round, I would say Minnesota, but if it were just a regular draft, of course the Wings. Usually the first pick is supposed to go to the worst player in the worst team in the league, and clearly that's not the case here. But if it were to go to another team that had been in the draw from the play-in series, I would have said Minnesota, just because they also have really experienced left wingers like in Ryan Donato and Zach Parise, who's also another great like goal scorer and like gets a lot of assists in. And then there's Matt Zuccarello, who would have also been a great mentor to also in those line pairings. So I mean, New York got it. I mean, there's nothing
There's nothing we can do about it now.
But I mean, it's not an awful place for the projected number 1 pick to go. I mean, like you said, it is a great market. I feel like if he went to Detroit, everything would have been put on his back, and people would have expected a lot more from him. I'm sure people still do expect a lot from him, but I feel like it would just been a lot more pressure if he had gone to a team as bad as Detroit. So Alexis Lafreniere, like Grace was saying at the beginning, is an insane player. When I was calculating how many points he had with Rimouski, he had a total of 332 points over 3 seasons, and that's including the playoffs, which I think it's ridiculous. Since we're a little bit upset, or like I guess kind of put off by this new system of determining the number 1 pick, do we think that they should adopt a similar way of predicting the number 1, like the first couple of picks, like the similar way?
It's stupid and I hate it.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you're saying that in a regular season, so let's just say next season, all those who don't go past the first round of the playoffs would be put into the draft?
Yes.
Absolutely not.
I'm just like trying to play devil's advocate here and see what your guys' opinion is on, because obviously we don't like this.
See, it makes sense this year because technically the qualifying round is not considered the first round of the playoffs. So I kind of get where the NHL was going like with that. But in saying that, I don't believe, so let's just say, okay, so this season right now, the teams who even did not make it on past the qualifying round shouldn't have had that big of an odd, like, you know, those odds to jump to the first overall pick. You know what I'm saying? Because I saw like the percentages of what it would take for one of these teams who didn't make it past the qualifying round to jump to the first overall, and I believe those odds shouldn't have been as big as they were.
Yeah, because it was what, a 12.5% chance for them
team
to get the first pick.
Yeah, it was all like equal.
Yeah, which is pretty high when you think about it. It's not a small, like it's a small number, but it's not a small odd. And for teams like I said, the Pens, the Oilers, the Leafs, teams that have like star players, that's a really high odd for them to get another star player in the making.
Yeah, because like we all saw that replay of Toronto's ping pong ball almost making it. Imagine if that would have happened, because we already know the Leafs in like the cap hell that they're in right now.
Yeah,
they would want to keep
not have signed Lafreniere.
No. As much as I like, I'm a huge Leafs fan. Like if they had gotten Lafreniere, I would have just gone insane. It's just not something that they can afford. They don't need another forward to begin with. I think I was telling Grace that if they got the number 1 pick, I would literally just trade that pick or however many defensemen we could get for that pick. It's not what these teams need.
Yeah, I think, okay, this year, however the draft happened was because of the pandemic and how the season was to unfold and how the NHL decided the way the season was going to unfold. But after this year, if all is good next year, all the teams who didn't make the playoffs should be entered into the lottery for the first overall pick, with the best odds given to the teams who are finishing closest to last in the league. That's just how it should be.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Because the Detroit Red Wings, they had 39 points this season, and the New York Rangers had 79. Like, that's a 40-point difference, and they're picking first and fourth. So actually, it doesn't make any sense.
I was going to say, so Detroit had 39 points. The Rangers had 37 wins. And when I saw that, I was like, what the heck? That's just what.
I mean, it would have been great to actually see the number 1 pick go to the team who actually really, really needs it. But like we said, it's because of the circumstances. There's nothing, obviously, the league, I guess, really could have done, just because the playoff and like play-in games are just so unique. and it's just not something we've seen before.
I mean, we all knew whatever was going to happen with the draft, people were going to complain. That's just how it was going to go.
There's always something to complain about with every year's draft. Like, I don't think anybody's ever happy with who gets the first 3 picks or who gets the picks after that. Like, people are always just going to have something to say. But from who was put in that draw, I'm happy the Rangers got it and not another really team that finished like in the top 10. Like, that would have just been ridiculous. Since we've established our view on the draft, let's move into the eliminated teams, because obviously, like we said, for the billionth time, they were the ones who were included in the draw for the number 1 pick. So who are we disappointed to see go?
I was honestly sad to see the Nashville Predators go, because I think they have a lot of talent on that team, and their goaltender, Saros, is really good. So it would have been nice to see him face some playoff action this year. But again, there's always next year. But it was just kind of disappointing to see that was the team that went.
For me, I would have to say the Jets. They were a really good team, but I kind of feel sad to see them go, mainly because of the injuries to Scheifele and Laine. They still continue to battle hard in the games, and you can tell, they were trying their best, but you could also see at the same time they were missing key players. But for me, what hit the most was that Hellebuck was named as a finalist for the Vezina, and a lot of people were, hoping to see what this guy could do in playoff, like in a playoff setting. They were looking for a huge performance out of him, and that's kind of what got me, the injuries and Hellebuck as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with Alessia. I really would have wanted to see the Jets go a little bit further into the playoffs and see what they could have, done, especially if they had made it into the playoff round. They could have gotten Scheifele back and eventually Laine. So it sucks because I feel like they definitely could have gotten far if they had their key players. You can't really expect them to, whip up a lot of magic if they're missing a lot of people that produce a lot of points for them. Hopefully they can, come back next season and, make it into the playoffs again, because last year they were unbelievable, and it'd be great to see what they can do again, especially with the great players that they have and the young players that they have that are growing within the system. I know these are based off performances, but is there any team that we miss to see go because they're just known to be in the playoffs, or we just expect them to win the cup?
Marjorie, don't make me talk about the Leafs. Don't make me do it.
Okay. I want to talk about the Leafs just because it's the perfect segue into our next segment. But I feel like a lot of people expect a lot out of the Leafs. It's something...
As they should.
Because there's so many star players on that team who, they pay the big bucks for, and they don't produce what they should be producing. And so it is completely frustrating to the fans and to the players because they're just known to flop.
I tweeted this when they lost. I literally cannot care anymore. As a fan, I don't have it in me to care.
It's hard.
And even Austin Matthews said today during his exit interviews that it's embarrassing not to make it past the first round for the 4th year in a row.
Yes.
And this wasn't even the first round. This wasn't the playoffs. I
think I said the word embarrassing to Grace throughout that series. I don't even know how many times. When they had lost that 3-0 lead, I was like, it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing. How can you lose with so many players that produce points in the regular season but can't produce anything in the playoff or qualifying rounds? It blows my mind that they can't get anything done.
And then in true Leafs fashion, they push it to a game 5 in the last 2 minutes of a 3-0 game, and then they lose. There was no other way for that game to go. They weren't going to win it. We all knew that. It was trash.
Alessia, as an outsider, because you are the Habs fan here, how did you see that situation?
I mean, before the series even started, I knew it would be close. I knew what Columbus had, but I told everybody, even the family members that I saw over this pandemic who I've been talking to, because most people in my family are Leafs fan, I said it's going to come down to coaching. and it's going to come down to what the players are going to bring and how hard they're going to battle. Look, the Leafs battled hard. They came back that one night from 3-0. But you can say that Tortorella, he kept playing that trap style with his team, and the Leafs just didn't know how to handle it. Honestly, with the talent that the Leafs had, I was hoping they were going to make it on. They're in a time with the talent they have with Tavares, Matthews, Marner, Nylander. They're in a win-now situation. And I was hoping that this year, at least they would make it past the qualifying round, because I was interested to see how they would do with another team other than the Boston Bruins in a playoff setting, right?
Yeah.
So I knew it was going to be close, but I thought that last game was going to be close. Not that they were going to go out 3-0. That's just like Maryuri and even you said, Grace, it's embarrassing for that organization to go out like the way they did in that last game.
It's hard. It's hard being a Leafs fan right now. It's hard. It's been hard for the past like 60 years. So there's a lot of things that the team needs to do. And in order to ensure a playoff spot next year, but not only ensure it, but to actually pass through more than one round. What do you think the teams that got eliminated need to do in order to ensure a playoff spot next year?
So I think the Oilers need their leadership to step up. So we mentioned McDavid's lack of emotion last week, and maybe that's only in front of the media. We don't know. We aren't in the dressing room. But it's important to have a captain who can get fired up and show emotion and rally the team. And there's no reason the Oilers shouldn't be in the playoffs still.
Okay, I agree with, so you're saying Connor McDavid in terms of emotion. I agree with that. Like you said, we can't really see what's going on in the locker room. But when we see with the media, he's like very, lack of emotion. Like we clearly saw that last week when we spoke about it. What I don't understand from fans and the media is that they're pinning the loss in the Oilers' first round exit or the qualifying round exit on their performance. So the performance of Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They combined for 23 points in 4 games. So the talent and the skill is there. Maybe not the leadership in the locker room, but they played one hell of a game, or games, I would say. But for me, so in my opinion for the Oilers, I think they need more balance and depth on all of their lines, because those 3 guys, they showed up, but maybe those other lines weren't producing like they could have been. That could also go for the Leafs too. They have that 1-star line, but the other lines aren't really producing or not matching that level of talent.
Yeah, and since you mentioned the Leafs, there's obviously, we need a balance. They need a balance of just, I don't know, of every line producing. That way they don't always have to rely on that one major line. And I think it's just time to trade one of those top players, specifically Nylander, for a defenseman. I feel like
Ouch.
I feel like they can risk losing Nylander. I don't think they can risk losing their captain. They can't obviously lose Matthews. He's a franchise player. And Marner, I feel like Marner's more reliable than Nylander. So I feel like it's time.
I'd lose Marner just because of the attitude, but that's just me.
It's so funny. It's so funny you guys brought that up, because I was actually going to ask you guys that question. Out of those 4, Tavares, Matthews, Nylander, and Marner, who would you trade away for major help on defense? So Marjorie's saying Nylander.
I say Nylander, and if we're going to talk about attitude, don't forget that Nylander also waited 10,000 years to get a new contract. He didn't play
but is he
until October, but Marner signed it before the season even started.
Yeah, but is he being overpaid by $4 million? I don't think so.
But I feel like either way, he has more chemistry, I think, with Tavares than Nylander has with any of the other ones. So I feel like...
And that's fair, and these are very hot takes.
So
because I feel like if we tweeted either of these opinions, we would get absolutely murdered on Twitter.
From how I see it, okay, I would say Tavares and Matthews are sort of like the untouchables. Mm-hmm. And I've heard a lot of reporters saying, so in terms of Marner, he has that, I don't know, a lot of reporters saying that the Toronto Maple Leafs wouldn't want to give him up because he has a big community presence, and they also nominated him for the King Clancy. But at the same time, I can see why some people are leaning on getting trading away Marner or Nylander. But I have to side with Marjorie. I think Nylander is probably the most, I don't know, I would say he's probably the most probable to be dealt.
And that does make sense for me. It does make sense. But I find Nylander more reliable than Marner. Because if you look at how Marner played in the play-in round, you had like different versions of him every shift. Whereas Nylander, you kind of know what to expect most of the time. Whereas Marner's just kind of like up and down.
I agree with that. And I was actually going to say, so the last game, so game 5 of Columbus, like versus Columbus, Marner in that entire game only had 1 shot on goal.
Yeah, the only bone I have to pick with Nylander is that he's a natural centerman, right? And so for him to finally get that center placement in that game against Columbus, and he did absolutely nothing in that line. That line
that's the thing, he can't play center.
And so when he's actually given that position, what he's always wanted and what he always, begs for, and he can't produce and he can't lead his line, then that's when I'm like, okay, I can't deal with him anymore, especially ever since he held out for so long with his contract. That just it bugs me.
I think that, well, these are great takes. Before we go trading the entire Leafs forward lines, we should work on these defensemen.
Oh yes, that's
because
true.
Justin Hall and Martin Marincin are what my nightmares are made out of.
Not even don't even get me started with Martin Marincin. You two know there's no player I have so much disdain for the whole entire league than for Martin Marincin. I tell you guys every single time, I do not know how he is a hockey player. I don't know who told him it was okay for him to be a hockey player. I don't know. And I'm very, very sorry, but he just cannot defend. There's sometimes where I'm like, oh, okay, nice play, but that's like once every 20 games. Most of the time I'm like, what are you doing? So for them, I feel like they need to kind of get off the Marincin train because they've been on him for the past 3 years. Babcock kept him around for so long, for who knows why, and then they kept him around for this season because he always plays with the Marlies, and then they also have to get rid of Cody Ceci.
Oh yes. Was that the pylon, Marjorie?
Oh my god. Okay. Sometimes with their defensemen, I get so heated. I just can't control myself. Cody Ceci is just, I had a lot of faith in him when the season started, but during this play-in series, I was like, yeah, let's time to move on. And there's no one who likes him more than Grace. Grace just also has something in it for him.
I can't stand half the players on the Leafs. They're my favorite team, and I don't like half of them. It's like Tyson Barrie. Tyson Barrie should not be a Leaf, and that is the hill I will die on.
It's just time to get rid of every defenseman, I think, except for Riley.
And Sandin.
And maybe Dermott, because sometimes I do like the way he plays. But other than that, they just need to erase everybody and start from scratch. And that's what I'm going to end it off on, because if me and Grace don't have someone to say stop, we'll just continue talking for the rest of the night. So after the Leafs, what do we think the Pens need to do in order to ensure a playoff spot? And we know that they're always guaranteed a playoff spot because they have really, really amazing players, but these really, really amazing players are getting a bit older, and they are inching towards an eventual retirement, and so the Pens can't really rely on them forever. So what are your guys' take on that?
I mean, I think the Penguins had a good series. It was an awful series, and no one, including myself, saw Montreal upsetting the Pens. But obviously I have to give credit to Montreal. They did a good job. And I said last episode that the only way that Montreal would beat the Penguins was if Carey Price stood on his head and played his absolute best. And if that wasn't the case, the power play and their offense and the players that haven't, been there and done God knows what, like Jonathan Drouin, needed to be at their best. And, you know, the kids showed up and they played their game, Suzuki and Kotkaniemi, and they beat the Pens. And like Maryuri said, should this team start adding younger players? And I think any team now in the NHL would benefit with having younger players. I think the Penguins, you know, they'll keep their core. They'll keep Crosby, they'll keep Malkin, Gensel, all those guys, and they'll make changes where, you know, where they need to. So I don't think like they'll go for a full rebuild, but they'll go for a retool in their core, in like their core. And I was thinking yesterday, I'm like, could there potentially be a coaching change in Pittsburgh? Mm-hmm. And then this morning, there was a quote from Penguins Jim Rutherford, and they said changes need to be made. And then all of a sudden, I check on Twitter, the Penguins, they came out and they said the Penguins will not renew the contracts of assistant coaches Sergei Gonchar, Jacques Martin, and Mark Recchi. So they did a full clear of their assistant coaches, but Mike Sullivan is probable to return as head coach next year.
I feel the same way about the team. Like, they can't get rid of Crosby or Malkin because they were part of that dynasty, right? So there's no way. They're franchise players. And they have a good team. They have strong players. Like, there's Sheary, and Matt Murray, their goalie, is pretty good too. He has a save percentage of .899, so it's not the best, but it's also not terrible. Mm-hmm. And their core players worked when they were a dynasty, and they won the cup twice in a row. And it's not like that happened 10 years ago. That was in 2016, 2017. But in my opinion, it is time for a bit of a refresh. You do need to get some of those younger players up, and players that aren't as attached to the team by like name, just how long they've been there. You can afford to kind of get rid of them now.
Yeah, especially since the game has gotten just so quick. And I'm not saying that these older players are slow and like they can't, you know, play as well as they did when they were younger. But it is, you know, it's different. You know, of course, they're not going to be the exact same player they were when they were 19. They still have a great stamina. They still have a great, you know, are in great shape. But younger players do bring a little bit of a oomph to the team, and they boost up the rest of the players, because you know, once you have younger players around you, the older guys are going to be like, I want to keep up, I want to, you know, play as well as the younger guys, and show the team, show upper management why you should just keep me along for a couple more seasons. So I agree with you guys, and definitely time for just a little bit of a refresh. Don't completely rebuild. I don't think that's in the Pens' nature at the moment, but just a little refresh, get those older guys with some healthy competition.
Yeah, I think the organization kind of understands, look, we have a pretty similar core like we did other years when we made it far in the playoffs, but the style in which the Penguins play is different now. So I think that's probably why they wanted to do sort of a coaching change, and we'll see where it goes from there.
With that, this week we introduced a new little segment to our show. We decided to include you, our listeners, into what we would be discussing on this week's show. And so we did a little questionnaire, or a little poll, I guess you would say, on our socials, and we asked, which team surprised you the most during the NHL's playoff qualifying round? The two options were the Philadelphia Flyers and the Chicago Blackhawks. So, Alessia, if you want to reveal our results.
So our results on Instagram were that 39% of the people, or our followers, said that they were most surprised by the Flyers, and 61% were most surprised about the Hawks making it on past the qualifying round. On Twitter, there was a tie, 50-50. And because only 2 people responded to that.
So for those of you listening, please follow us on Twitter as well. Just a little in-show promotion. But what do you guys think? What's your opinion? Do you agree with those stats?
For me, the Hawks surprised me the most, or at least more than the Flyers, because I've always thought the Flyers were a good team, even before the qualifying round and the NHL put in their play-in plan for this summer. I love Carter Hart. He's an absolute beast. I'm just going to say it, for 21 years old, and the way he comports himself in net. Like I said last episode, reminds me so much of Price, the way he's so calm in net. But not only Carter Hart on that team, I just love the style at which the Flyers play at. they're gritty, but they also show that skill and their talent. Was I surprised that they finished in first after the round robin? I actually was. That's where the Flyers surprised me, that they actually pulled it off and were able to finish first overall in the round robin. But it wasn't as surprising as the Hawks taking out Edmonton.
Yeah, and Chicago came out flying during that first round too. Like it wasn't even like they needed a few games to build up to it. Like right away they were ready to beat that Oilers team.
Like Alessia said, like I initially was surprised by the Flyers because I really didn't see them finishing first in that round robin play. But, you know, I always have loved Carter Hart, and I've always believed he's been such an amazing goaltender and such an amazing starter goaltender, even though he's so young. He just looks like he has so much experience when he's only been playing for not even that long in the league, right? But I decided to, like, when I was like looking into things, I was like, maybe the Blackhawks do surprise me a little bit more, because they did finish 23rd overall in the league. They finished one spot before the Canadians, and they just barely passed through this like qualifying round. And so that's what surprises me, because they had a 32-30-8 record. You know, winning 32 games compared to the Flyers who won 41, that's a big stretch. And for the Blackhawks to sweep the Edmonton Oilers, I feel like it was pretty interesting, especially with Taves stepping up. You know, he accumulated 7 points over 4 games. That's a lot of points, especially for someone who's a little bit older. And, you know, we don't hear like as much as we do from older players like we do with Sidney Crosby or Malkin or, you know, other great players. So I think at the end of the day, I think the Blackhawks did, surprise everybody, just because they weren't playing that well in the regular season.
Yeah, as much as it's kind of like hard to underestimate, you know, Kane and Taves, the Hawks didn't have a great season this year. Like we all saw the way they played. Like Maryuri said, they finished 23rd in the league. But if you look at it, the Hawks are like another team that has those younger players like Doc, DeBrincat, and Strome. So you see that their core, like Taves and Kane, they're getting much older, and then the team is starting to slowly give responsibility to these younger guys, which is, you know, it's really good to see from a team like the Hawks.
I feel like those were two great teams to see, like, kind of get through. Teams I don't think we really expected to garner a lot of noise and attention. But it's, I mean, Chicago did lose it yesterday against the Knights, but it'll be interesting to see how that series plays out and how the Captain Taves will lead his team and see if they can pull off a win in this series. And so, speaking of the Knights versus the Hawks, we're going to talk about the playoff matchups now. Yesterday's game, you know, the Blue Jackets versus the Lightning. Insane game. I don't know if you guys were watching it. I definitely was not watching it since 3 p.m. because I was running errands. But then when I got home and I was like, how are they still playing? I think it was only the second overtime. And then I was like, I can't.
See, for me, I was watching the entire game up until the second overtime. And with this pandemic now, I usually go for a walk or a run at night. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for my walk. It's going to be over. So as I'm maybe at the last 10 minutes of this walk, I check my phone and I see it's the 5th overtime. I sprinted all the way back home. My mom was on this walk with me. We usually just do laps around our block. I'm like, no, I'm sprinting home. Nobody's going to see this ever again. No. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to watch a game that's going to its 5th overtime in the playoffs ever again. So I just sprinted back home and I got back in just in time to see it.
Yeah, it was 5 hours of hockey, which is insane and straight. Like, I don't know how they did it. But my mom's a Boston fan, so we were waiting for the Boston-Carolina game. And we're just sitting there, and she's like, oh, when's the Boston game going to start? And I'm like, right now you're looking at about 11 p.m. And she's like, oh, that's a long time from their, 8 o'clock start. And the Tampa Bay Columbus game didn't end until 8:30 or something? Or was it after 9? It was after 9.
It was after 9.
Yeah,
it was crazy. I don't know how they did it. I don't know how anybody did it.
I don't know how hockey players can just play and play and play, because you can't really tell that they're tired. Sometimes I'm like watching these games and I'm like, they look so fresh, and it isn't until when they have their interviews like post game and they're completely out of breath, they're like sweating buckets and buckets, and you see really how much it takes a toll on them. But like Seth Jones, with how many minutes did he play? Close to 60
He played
minutes?
65 minutes and 6 seconds.
Like, that's incredible. Like, I pass out after like running for like 2 minutes.
It's crazy.
I can't walk for 2 minutes, let alone run. So
I was gonna say, it's so crazy because when he was doing his post-game interview and they asked him like, hey Seth, like, how are you doing? Like, how are you feeling? It's like, oh, I feel fine. I'm like, you feel fine after all of that? And then you see I think it was Braden Point.
Yeah.
He had his post-game interview.
Yeah,
I thought the guy was gonna pass out.
I'm like, don't make him stand up any longer. Let him sit down. My God.
And not only did Seth Jones have an incredible night, even though the Blue Jackets lost, Corpusalo again coming through with an amazing performance. What was it? 85 saves on 88 shots.
Yeah, he broke Kelly Rudy's record, right?
Yes.
Like, just that's crazy. Like, he's been so unbelievable this whole, NHL restart. Like I said the last episode, like when Torts put him in net against the Leafs, I was like, ugh, this is gonna be easy. He doesn't have any playoff experience. And now I'm like, I like eat my words. I'm like, I'm never gonna doubt anybody ever again, because it literally looks like he's been playing for months and months on end without any break. Like, he's just an incredible goalie.
Yeah, he played outstanding in game 1, but not even just this series. Last series against the Leafs, he was like the key part of why the Leafs like weren't able to get like past Columbus.
Yeah, he had 2 shutouts in that series, and so it's having 2 shutouts against a team who is so like offense heavy is just proves to you how great of a goalie he is. And so, aside from that Columbus and Tampa game, which teams do we see coming out of the West and coming out of the East?
So, coming out of the West, my biased inner bandwagon Golden Knights fan sees the Golden Knights winning the Stanley Cup. No. But I do think the Golden Knights and the Blackhawks are going to be a really interesting matchup. I was watching the game last night, and it was fast-paced. They were a good match for each other, and it was just really entertaining hockey. The Arizona Coyotes and the Colorado Avalanche, I want to say the Coyotes are going to beat the Avalanche. I just have this gut feeling about it, and I don't know what it is. But I think that's going to be an interesting series to watch. I feel like they are going to go to a Game 7.
Is it because it's like underdog season and we're just rooting for like all the other teams who usually would
so.
not be winning? Yeah.
I guess I would say I would agree with Grace. I like the way the Golden Knights are playing so far, and they also have, the goaltending talent on that team. Grace, you obviously know with Fleury, Ed Leonard, it's insane. And then the Arizona and Avalanche series, I don't know, I'm going to give the edge to the Avalanche. But not only, I think the team I love the most out of the West right now are the Flames. I don't know, it's just the style that they play at, and I feel like I just really like Tkachuk in the way he plays. I feel like he's going to be a key player in how far this Flames team goes in these playoffs.
Yeah, I have to completely agree with Alessia. Like, the one team that I want to see come out the most out of this playoff round is the Flames, just because they have such a great way of playing. They produce so much. They have like all around players on every line. Dubé scored 2 goals the other day, and he's just a great, really young player. And Tkachuk is another player who adds a lot of grit and strength to that team. So I feel like that'll be really exciting to see what happens in that Dallas series. Out of the East, I don't know. I really want the Canes.
Okay, wait. Can we talk about how skipped over the Vancouver Canucks and St. Louis Blues series is?
Oh.
Because literally nobody's talking about it. Like, we just skipped it right now, and I haven't seen anybody talk about it.
I was going to mention it, but I was like, I don't even know. I mean, I feel like the Blues are just favored just because obviously they're the reigning champs.
Yeah, but for defending Stanley Cup champions, they have there isn't anything special going on like in that entire series. really
Yeah, it's
nothing
true.
happening.
Nobody's really talking about this series.
It's like the Canucks, they have great young players. But like honestly, other than that, like I don't know what to say about each team. I feel like that series is just kind of like,
It's just kind of happening. It's there.
yeah,
And
it's not.
I feel like everybody feels the same way because nobody's like, wow, did you see the St. Louis Blues game the other day?
Yeah,
Just kind of like, oh, well, whatever happens, happens.
it's like, oh, they won, great. Now let's get on to the other
Yeah.
games. So, since we have acknowledged the Canucks and the Blues for
Sorry,
the
Canucks
sake,
fans.
yeah, let's see who we want coming out of the East. The Canadians and the Flyers. I feel like that's going to be a pretty good series, just because the way that Carey Price has been playing, and like Alessia always mentions, the Canadians have really, really great young players, but they're going to meet their match with Carter Hart, and also the Flyers have a great offensive defenseman in Shane Gostisbehere. And so, I don't know, I feel like that's going to be kind of back and forth. I don't really think you can really predict who's going to win that one.
I mean, it's gonna be close, and it's kind of hard for me to watch because before the qualifying round, or before we knew the results of the round robin, I wanted to see the Flyers go far, to be quite honest with you guys. I don't know, there's something about that team that I love, like their style of play. And as much as, the Habs are my team and I love them, but I don't know, there's something about this Flyers team that just tells me that they can really go far this year. Like I said, when the Canadians were still in the matchup with the Penguins, if they want to beat the Penguins, Carey Price needs to be his absolute best. And we saw what he did last series, like the last series that they played with the Penguins. He was amazing. And we also need guys to step up. And last series, like with the Penguins, Kotkaniemi and Suzuki stepped up. And not a lot of people were expecting them to step up because they're the youngest players. But Claude Julien has put a lot of confidence and given them a lot of responsibility. So, like I said before, if they want to beat the Flyers, Price has to play amazing. And players like Gallagher, Tatar, Phil Deneau, and especially Jonathan Drouin need to be on top of their game because the Flyers are a really powerful team.
Yeah, I feel like that'll just be a really interesting series to watch. Like I said, I honestly feel like it'll be exciting to see how these teams fare out against each other. I honestly feel like it'll just be a good back and forth, just because the Canadians got through the Pens, and the Pens are a really hard team to get through. And if they can get through the Pens, I really feel like they can play against the Flyers. And then after that, we also have the Canes with the Bruins. The Bruins did win today, but I would really like to see the Hurricanes come out of the series because I really do like that team.
So I think the Hurricanes, not only are they great hockey-wise, but also fan-wise. Like, I want to see what that social media team can do in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
They've just been that social media manager is just hilarious.
They kill it.
Whoever runs that account, like, I just want to go up to them and like shake their hand and be like, thank you for providing us with this content. So yeah, that's my take on that. You can't really underestimate either team, so I feel like that's always a good watch. Then we also have the Islanders with the Capitals. I don't know, I'm not really interested by that series. I don't know how you guys feel about that one.
I mean, it's the Washington Capitals. They're always bound to give you some good hockey. The New York Islanders, well,
I mean, they have a good team, but
yeah.
like, do I honestly feel like they have a good enough team to go, like, to pass by like Ovechkin and TJ Oshie and Braden Holtby? I don't know.
I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling too good for those New York Islanders. I don't know, Alessia, how do you feel about that one? You seem to be shaking your head a little bit.
No, I agree with you guys. Like, Washington, we all know like the powerhouse that Ovechkin is. But I don't know, there's like one side of me that I can see the Islanders surprising some people, but it's gonna take a lot.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah,
I'm not gonna like completely shut down the possibility of the Islanders taking out the Capitals, because that's just that's just what I'm thinking. But I understand that I think Washington kind of has the edge in this one, but I can also see the Islanders coming out of this as like a surprise, like an upset. Like I can see them upsetting the Capitals.
So yeah, like didn't they sweep the Penguins last year? So I feel like with Alessia, we can definitely see them upsetting the Capitals, but I don't know, like you said, it'll take a lot for them to do that again. Sometimes, luck is on your side and you can just, do things like that, but at the same time, they really didn't get that much farther into the playoffs after that. So I don't know. It's a series that we'll keep an eye on, but it's not the series that I'm going to be like, yeah, that's the one I want to watch.
Well, yeah, and like the Islanders swept the Penguins last year, sure, but then they got swept by the Carolina Hurricanes.
Which is
See,
hilarious.
and that's why I love the Hurricanes. Since we're done with all of those matchups, because it's quite a few, and we took up a lot of time on that, let's just quickly go through what players we want to watch during this first round. There's been so many, but which ones do we really, really want to keep a close eye on?
I mean, we already mentioned Korpisalo and what he did against the Leafs and what he's still doing now in the series that they're in. I mean, he's just been outstanding, like insane performance from him. And like I said before, he was a key part of why they beat the Leafs, why Columbus beat the Leafs. And if Columbus does go past the first round, he's going to be a key part in why they won as well.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like we've said enough about Korpisalo. I feel like everybody knows how much we love Korpisalo, and I feel like everybody knows how much we are obsessed with him now. So I don't feel like there's too much to be said, but yes, we are going to be keeping a very close eye on him. Speaking again about the Canes, I really, really love Sebastian Aho just because he's a great young player. He produces a lot, and I feel like he's been one of the top guys for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I agree. He finished the qualifying round with 8 points, which was second in points among all the teams, just under Connor McDavid. And he finished second in assists as well. So like Marjorie said, this is a guy you definitely want to keep your eyes on with the Canes because he's a big part of that team as well.
Yeah. And then lastly, once again, we're going to mention Jonathan Toews just because, like I said earlier, he produced those 7 points over those 4 games, which I think is pretty amazing. I mean, we're not surprised by how much he can produce because he's always been such an amazing player. But since the Blackhawks have been such a quiet team over the past couple of years and we don't really talk about them as much, it's great to see Jonathan Toews producing as much as he is and helping the Blackhawks get through, the next round. Speaking of Toews, he is a little bit older, and that's why, like I said, we are, a little bit surprised just because he's still producing as much as he is, and it's great to see that he is. He is 32 years old, so he's getting up in age, and so since we're speaking about age, there's 2 players that I thought that are kind of, it's sad to see them not get through to the next round, and that being Jason Spezza and Patrick Marleau. They're both free agents now. They only signed 1-year contracts with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Pittsburgh Penguins, respectively. And I don't know how you guys feel about seeing those 2 old-timers go.
I mean, I'm not a Leafs fan, but you guys know they need help on defense. Now, Jason Spezza's contract, it was $700K. So for us as hockey fans, we're like, that's not a lot of money. But in terms of where Toronto is in their cap and how tight it is, I don't really see the Maple Leafs kind of pushing to get Jason Spezza a contract or offering him a contract, because if Dubas intends on improving his team at defense and at offense, and if he's going out and he's looking for guys other than third line defensemen or possibly, these like fourth line forwards, he's going to have to, make some cuts. And I believe Spezza will be a cut. He'll either go to another team for a small contract or he'll just retire in Toronto, possibly.
That's what I was going to say. So I don't think this is the end of the road for Jason Spezza, because he adds some grit, some real grittiness, and some veteran leadership to whatever team he's on. So do I think the Leafs will keep him? No, and I kind of hope not. Just so that they make room for better defensemen and better forwards. But I think a team with a ton of younger guys like Detroit or Chicago, teams that may need a little bit more veteran leadership, they might give Spezza a chance because they could benefit from that. But like Alessia said, I don't think it'll be any like blockbuster contract. It'll be again another year at league minimum.
Yeah, and because of that, he probably won't be going to a cup contending team. And since he's obviously up in his years now, I'm pretty sure he's 37 years old. So it's going to be hard for him to ever, have the experience of winning a cup, which is what saddens me, because with the Leafs, that was probably his closest chance of ever winning a cup, and I'm saying that as a Leafs fan, which is obviously not true, but from the teams that he could have gone to, since he's older and for his contract, it was probably the closest he could have ever gotten to winning a cup. So it's sad to see him not get through a little bit farther. I feel like he definitely deserves a lot better because he did play so well in that series. He fought, which is crazy to see come out of him. So,
and like one of the only Leafs that fought.
That ever fights.
Throw that out there, but we can skip over that.
I mean, the reason that I said he could potentially retire is because Toronto is his hometown.
Oh, so for sure.
That's probably a reason. I mean, one of the main reasons he signed with Toronto. But that's why I see. Like, I agree with Grace. It's probably not the end of Spezza. He could definitely get another year somewhere else. But because it's Toronto and it's his hometown, he could potentially retire here, and that would be the end. Sadly.
And then, speaking of another player that could be retiring, you never really know with players. They say they're not going to retire, and then all of a sudden they retire, or it's the other way around. Patrick Marleau.
I don't see him getting signed.
No,
because he's been flipped between teams a few times in the past couple years, and I don't see anybody giving him another chance. He's 40 years old. He's had an awesome career. And, like, everywhere he goes, fans, teammates, coaches love him.
Adore him, yeah.
So he's had a great career, and now might be the time to retire because I don't think, even if he tries to get signed, I don't think he'll get a chance anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's like the same. It's honestly like the same situation as Spezza, I feel. I mean, like, a lot of teams, especially the teams that, didn't make it past the qualifying round, like Pittsburgh, they want to look for changes, not huge changes, but small changes. And if they have to carry on a contract that's even $700K, it's not worth it for them because they can use that money and make use of it somewhere else for a better player that can help their team.
Yeah, honestly, this season I was even surprised that the Pens had signed him. I definitely did not see that coming after his season with the Leafs last year. I was kind of just expecting him to retire. And so the Leafs and the Pens are probably the only two teams that probably would have given him the chance to actually win the cup. But now that he's obviously 40 years old, teams are not really looking for that much of an older player. They'll go into the 30s, but not someone that's that old. It's just a waste, I guess, of time and money. Sadly, that's how the league works. And so it's another sad person to see, not get through a little bit farther and, not have the opportunity to win the cup. I mean, there's a lot of other games that need to be watched. There's lots of games being played at the moment.
Yeah, so after you listen to this, you'll already know the outcome of Arizona, Colorado, Montreal, Philly, Vancouver, St. Louis, who we love, Carolina and Boston. But tomorrow night, so there's Columbus and Tampa Bay, Chicago and Vegas, Carolina and Boston again, and Calgary and Dallas.
Lots of games to watch, lots of things that'll happen, I'm sure, in the next coming week that we'll have lots to talk about. There's always so much to say.
Keep your sticks on the ice and your
heels on the dance floor, ladies and gents. See you next week.